I am Troy Haines from theSPACE. I'm here with Christine Clifford from Christine Clifford. Is it your brand at the moment, Christine?
Yes. I hang everything off Christine Clifford or the Inner Boardroom.
Okay,
So either of those two things.
cool. So today we're going to talk around the mind stuff, controlling your mind. I don't know, for me, I'm just keen to unpack it a little bit more because you'll probably hear Christine and I talk about the mind moving forward. This is like one of a bunch of fireside chat kind of things that we want to do.
Mm.
And just to, I don't know, we're just going to record some of the conversations that Christine and I talk around. I'm starting to, you may or may not have seen in some of the posts that I've been putting around about transformational technologies. It's technology to help evolve the human condition, something that Christine and I are both passionate about, that we're going to see a lot more content and conversation around moving forward. So I'm stoked to be here with Christine and just have a conversation around trans tech, controlling the mind in general.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's just so on target because we're all struggling with this really busy world of how we control our mind. And what are the consequences of not controlling your mind? There's a couple of different ways of like unpacking it, and unpacking it from different perspectives as well. From a real experience, we're constantly having there's a constant competition for our attention. So basically, it doesn't matter whether it's your work or your home or your kids. We've got so much going on at the moment in this technological age. We need help.
And for me, that's, I think, our greatest power is our attention. It's that old saying, where our attention goes, energy flows. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that point. Like, our attention is our power.
Attention is everything. Focus, being able to pay attention to one thing and not be distracted gives your brain the opportunity to actually complete something, give your everything to that piece of work rather than doing everything half-assed, and there's lots of science that says, if you're working on a project and you're kind of getting deep into it, and then all of a sudden you get a text message or something like that, your brain goes out of where you're at, and even though you might only switch your attention for a couple of minutes, the estimates are that it can take 20 minutes for you to actually get back into the space where that project, where the gold is. If you're continually doing that all day, you're just blowing 20 minutes, a third out of every hour of your work time.
Plus, it shifts your state from you might have been in the flow doing something, incrementally shifts your state up into those beta states. So then it's hard to then hold your attention on one thing because you're in beta. You've got a lot more beta brainwave state. So your attention then craves that distraction. And I'm sure we've all at some point experienced it, where your head's in a bit of a spiral and you're just like all over the shop and you're not being able to focus. So I think once you allow that distraction in, it's a recipe for an ongoing spiral into beta.
Absolutely. And it is a spiral, and that's a really good description, Troy, because we not only spiral down, but we spiral up. So it's like steps on a staircase where, and if your attention does get taken, like you say, and all of a sudden you are sitting in like a high beta brainwave pattern, etc., you're not only, trying to refocus your attention by, putting into practice what you think or how you go about things, but you're competing with the neural architecture. You're competing with your brain. Your brain's going, you know what, I just can't shift gears that quick, so it makes everything harder. It's like walking through mud. You get overwhelmed and stressed and procrastinate and all those things that we all know about so well. Yet it's like a snowball effect, where you've got the rock, going down the hill, but if you can kind of catch the rock before it goes, or catch yourself in those first few minutes, you've got this ability to kind of like intervene and change what was about to happen.
Mm.
Uh, mm.
Yeah. So it might be worth just quickly, I'll let you do it if that's okay, unpack the different brainwave states in probably 30 seconds or less. Are you willing to do that just for anybody that's
Yeah,
listening?
sure. Well, the ones we know about or that we use most of the time are delta and theta and alpha and beta, and sometimes we even talk about gamma. Um, there are other brainwave states, but they're the ones that we have access to and that we measure in EEG. So if you're doing some biofeedback, etc., that's what we're playing with. And delta is, it's primarily when we're asleep. It's a very low amplitude wave. And it kind of like when you have a lot of delta in a real time state, it really plays with reality, to be honest. You kind of like can get in very deep with delta. Theta, of course, is what happens like every time you blink and you close your eyes, you go into theta, because that's the state that we it's a precursor to calming down. It's a precursor to.
So you increase the theta waves. It may not be that you're like fully immersed in that beta state, but would you say you increase the frequency of the beta waves? The theta waves?
Well, it's a relationship. So every brain is different. And what I do notice about people is that there's often high theta, and when you train that theta down, so it's like a tiredness. It's like this brain wave that's kind of replicating this tiredness in your everyday. It's like kind of sluggishness when there's too much theta when you're awake. Okay, and then we've got alpha, which is this is the beautiful place of being able to sit in all there is, and it's a beautiful calm and particularly good for thinking and imagining and really letting your mind open up and be in flow. Now, beta, low beta is really good. Like low stress is actually really good for us. But it's the high beta that's really damaging. The high beta that is, indicating that our mind is just working really, really hard. I kind of liken it to, you've just either the computer analogy or the car, but you're driving the car, you're sitting there, you've got your foot on the clutch, your foot on the brake, you're just not going anywhere. You start putting your foot on the accelerator and you're pushing, but nothing's working, no matter how hard you try. And you often hear people who are in high beta all the time go, it doesn't matter what I do, I just can't get there, I'm doing all this stuff. And you see them being highly distractible, like especially in business, because that's, where we're coming from.
Yep.
I've got this idea, I'm working on this idea, and then the next thing you know, they're working on something else, and then they've gone to somewhere else. And they're like, I've got to include your core messages here. Why are you adding all this other stuff in? And that's, primarily because our brain has just got so many players on the stage, it can't cope. And so I hope that helps with the meaning.
With the beta as well, like using the computer analogy, it's like when you're using a computer and it's just like sluggish and it stops working as effectively and doesn't respond as it needs to respond, and you just need to restart it. It's kind of like that's what meditation can do. It can be that restart. That's what it's also
absolutely.
It can be that restart for you then to go, now I'm fresh again. I'm not overwhelmed in those beta waves.
Yes, you have to, it's mind, body, spirit. There are tactics and strategy. There are, supplements and trans tech and, meditation ways to get back into that space where your brain has It's like when you're driving a really good car and everything's going well, you know, you're changing gears, clutch and accelerator and brake, it's all happening, and it's like you're driving a car really professionally. You're using the least amount of fuel, you're taking care of the car, everything's working really well. um, in in opposition to, or in difference to, you know, you've got this beautiful car and you're driving at a zillion miles an hour in a 60 zone, and you're using up a pile of fuel. You know, people who are like, you know, I'm going to zoom all the way to the next set of lights and I'm going to use up all these resources, etc. I'm not actually, and then the little putt comes next to it, and really they haven't got any further ahead, but they're just using up all these resources. And our brain is really resource hungry. So approximately 4% of your body weight, but 20% of your resources.
Yeah, wow. And gamma, real quick.
Gamma's one of these really interesting spikes that we have, and lots of really interesting things happen in gamma. We can be highly creative. We can have flashes of insight that we are unsure how we've even come up with that. The creativity that is not built on past experience, you know, having a unique, original idea, stuff like that. The real magic happens in these gamma spikes.
Yeah, nice.
Mm.
Cool. Yeah, that's a lot of that sort of framework of the different brainwave states is at the heart of what the space is about. Like, and that's why the A is reversed out in the space logo for alpha. It's something that I learned around back in the day, early space, and even before, when learning to teach meditation in a corporate setting, just to bring a little science around how meditation can influence those different brainwave states and access those powerful states and move out of those less productive states. So thank you for unpacking that.
And you know, it's so exciting now, because what we're looking at is trans tech that actually enables you to meditate or obtain the states that you're looking to experience, and not have to do, you know, 3 hours of meditation a day, because none of us we're all time poor and we don't have that. So having a practice that actually, you know, speeds up the process to something that's really achievable for most people, that's a game changer.
Yeah, having the tech put us into those states, as opposed to needing to learn how to do that. Like, I've been meditating for probably 18 years now, and I can change my state, and I'm pretty active, increasingly more active at teaching people how to do that. But I find that people struggle with it because it is a discipline, it takes practice, and it's a daily practice, and people are time poor, and it just, you're competing against the mind to a large extent for your attention. And for me, this is like a distinction that I've seen through observing the mind, is that, you know, I think that our attention is our greatest gift, and the mind, to a large extent, has control of our attention. The mind, for me, being like thoughts, feelings, stories, and we can get lost in those with our attention. And I think it's when we sit and actually try to meditate that we realize how little control of our attention we do have. And generally, most people are at the mercy of their minds, which is a store of all past experiences, the pain, the good, the bad, the ugly, the limitations to a large extent. Like, for me, I don't know, I think the way we live with the mind, it's like the mind is a cage. It's like the Matrix. It's this illusion, this veil that's put over to what is really possible. Because I know, for me, when I sit in meditation practice outside of the mind with my attention, like, those gamma spikes are real, you know, like the insights that you have, the energy that you can channel is, you tap into a sense of being that you feel the intelligence that created everything, and you know yourself as part of that intelligence, which is freaking profound. And, you know, you feel amazing. And, you know, like, then I see how much the mind then creates this limitation on humanity in our over-identification with it, in that, you know, the voices in our heads, what it's saying to us, and the stories and the beliefs, you know, like we live under that veil of the mind. And for me, like, that's why I'm really particularly passionate about trans tech and meditation and all this space. It's like freeing people from that matrix, that veil, the cage of the mind, because it's outside of that, when we take control of our attention, that I think we'll really truly know what humanity's, what we're capable of.
Well, you know, the thing is that decision making is crucial. Imagine how many decisions we make each day, and having the space in your mind to know that you have a choice, that in any moment there is an array of things that you can choose. But if you're on automatic pilot, if you're stressed and you haven't taken control of your mind, what happens is your mind makes the choice for you based on all of these past experiences and stories and learnings we have about each other and ourselves that we've learned and picked up along the way from, you know, the moment of our birth. And a lot of that gets done when we are pre-verbal, when we don't have any way of judging what's happening. So we create a lot of stuff that isn't really useful to us. And then that's what's driving our mind to create the safety that we're pursuing. It's, you know, it hobbles your life experience if you don't come to a place where you can go, oh, isn't that interesting? There's that thought that my brain's having, that my mind's having. And you know what? Wow, that's interesting. I wonder where that came from, because that's just not true in my life anymore. And, you know, I'm going to choose something completely different, rather than entertaining the thought and then, you know, making up a story about the thought, you know, which is down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's what the mind does.
Yeah.
The mind loves the story, and it loves to take you in the story. And I think that for me, it's that the ability to be able to sit outside it and observe, because in that we become less the mind. And I know, and I'm quite particular on languaging that sort of uses the mind as a sense of me. Like, for my awareness and through my practice, I've come to know myself more as this being, like the soul, I guess, like that has the ability to, that has a mind, that has this body, but for the most part, I am this entity, this awareness, this intelligence that's connected to each and every other person on the planet, and all the things. And we are, to a large extent, well, I think we are all this, but for the most part, most people are asleep because they're encapsulated by the mind. And that's this concept of awakening, I feel, is like, to awaken is to know who you really are, which is not the sum of the contents in your mind, the conditioning, all the stuff that you mentioned, like pre-verbal, and, you know, a lot of that collective conditioning as well. Like, well, we can step outside of that, then wow, you know, like, that's where the magic begins.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, like, and it's not just our pre-verbal stuff, or, you know, you think about the collection of the story, you know, there's, you know, they've only done the science in mice at the moment, but, you know, that's always, you know, the precursor to what, you know, they're going to discover about us, that, you know, we keep like something like 7 generations of trauma in our DNA. So if, you know, the mouse study was basically, they did an experiment where they took some mice and they basically made them scared of cherry blossom. So they put cherry blossom in a little cage and they give them a little mild electrical shock on their feet. Don't approve of all of this, obviously, but like, this is the study.
That's what they do.
This is what they do. And so then for 7 generations, without those progeny ever being exposed to cherry blossom, they were still scared of it.
Yeah, wow. I guess
7 generations later.
You see that in, I guess, in nature. It's an important part of
Yep.
survival, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
for that to be passed down from generation to generation to keep them safe. Like, so we're not that far removed from that. We are, like, so.
I think we have to accept, like, that we're animals, like we are a creature and we have components. And I think, I think about the brain as kind of being the hardware, it's the physicality, it has um, limitations or opportunities to do things that are, have some guiding principles. And then we have this mind, which is kind of like it's like the software. And we've got, it's like getting a new phone. You get your new iPhone and it's quick, it's fast, you can't believe how good the camera is, everything's fantastic. And then gradually you download music, you've got audiobooks, you've got all the stuff that you put on and all the different apps that you bring in, etc. And all of a sudden the iPhone's like going chugga, 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 it's full and it's got too many places to go. You've got to slim it down, And so we defrag or delete or whatever it is so that we can actually get that high performance again. And that's what we're going to do with our brains, bring it in.
That's the thing, is it like there's a movement towards essentialism, minimalization, and just focus. It's about going deep. So then and in going deep, then you notice the breadth that's available to you, because then you expand, but you expand at a whole new level than you were previously. It's very powerful.
And it's very, very powerful. And the other thing is that it not only builds resilience for you to be able to hold your attention in the moment, etc. It builds resilience for you to navigate your way through the traumas of life as well. Like life is a roller coaster and there's lots of things happen. And when something doesn't go, when you have an unmet expectation or something happens out of your control, instead of your brain or your mind running away with what could happen, future catastrophizing.
Because you're in it. Because you're in your mind. Yeah.
Because you're in it.
Yeah.
But if you if you have the capacity to be able to go, you know what, there isn't anything that I can do about this up until this point. I need to maybe take some time out, go for a walk, get some sun on my face and do the things that I know that are my process to actually bring me back to where I'm operating at the most optimal level.
Yeah. And it's that space that, you get from being able to hold your attention on, the present moment, as opposed to getting lost in that emotion and the reaction to that. It's that space of being able to observe it as something that's outside of the person that's in control. That creates that ability. And yeah, and I guess to a large extent, there's a lot of talk around emotional intelligence, and this is what emotional intelligence is. From my perspective and experience, is the ability to be able to observe and not be lost in those emotions.
Well, I think emotional intelligence is also knowing your process, knowing you. So, being able to go, this is my personal antidote to this situation. So when I find myself getting caught up in the mind, I will have a process that maybe is different from your process.
Yeah, cool.
Depending on how you get into flow. Like some people need to go for a run. Some people need to go and do something that's adventurous. Like people get into flow in different ways and have a predisposition to what is meaningful for them. So sometimes people get caught off because, they read something about mindfulness or meditation. They think, I can't sit down for an hour. But you can run in meditation. You can walk in meditation. You can drive your car while you're meditating. Just being aware. Like when I was driving into work this morning, I noticed a couple of things about myself and I went, oh, okay, so my process is to take in all of the beauty
So you
Go on.
go.
I was just going to.
I don't know. I just you keep going, but I've got a little thing I want to put there because I'm not sure I 100% agree on the meditation. But keep going, and then I'll come back to it.
Okay, so what I'm utilizing the time for is to strengthen my ability to pay attention. So I'm not taking my brain to a place where I need to close my eyes and it's not safe to drive the car, but I'm empowering myself by practicing noticing how my hands feel on the wheel, feeling the bumps in the road as I drive, noticing everything around me, but paying attention to just being a good driver.
Cool. So I guess for me, it's a languaging thing. So like for me, words point to different things. And when I hear meditation, that points to something. When I hear like mindfulness, for me, what you were talking about there is mindfulness. So I'm being mindful of my actions. But meditation points to, for me, is that point of separation from the mind where I have control of my attention. And I have a mindfulness practice that gets me to the point where I'm able to then sit and meditate. And for me, and this is just like maybe a semantics thing or a language thing, but for me, I don't know. I think language is important because it does point to different things. And how I've learned language that works for me is meditation is that point of separation. Like, because I don't think I don't think it's called meditation when you're driving, but I think it's called mindfulness. And I think you can be mindful walking along the beach, but for me, I'm not sure that's meditation as well. That's just my point of view and how I sort of dissect it.
Yeah, okay. So I probably come from a little bit different, and I accept like the using mindfulness rather than meditation as it applies to this situation. It's when I start to pay attention and I start to bring myself into that space of being really grateful, really honing my attention, I know that I'm actually changing my brainwave patterns. So for me, it's about whether, do I get to that point where I'm in a meditation experience where I experience that separation, or I experience something that for me feels a particular way that lets me know that I'm there. Or whether it's me continually kind of training my mind to control what it is how I am in the busyness of the experience outside me.
Yeah. I guess a couple of things there is like it is odd, like, because I think the mind to a large account keeps us a sense of being separate to all things, because and it's a cause of loneliness to a large extent, I think. And that feeling of like separation and isolation because we're lost in the noise of our mind. But it's in that practice of meditation that you learn to separate from the mind, and in separating from the mind, then you feel a connection to everything and everyone and your intelligence and love and like a greater sense of who you are, your internal wisdom and your intuition. So it's kind of like, whilst the mind, we talk about separation, the mind keeps us separate, but we need to for me, in my practice, it's sort of been about separating from the mind so that I can reconnect. So it's kind of like separation is like twofold there. The mind keeps it separate, but in pulling away from the mind, then, and taking control of it to a large extent, then we feel that connection that we all crave. Would you say? That's my experience.
It's interesting. I'm trying it on as we speak, because I'm sitting here and talking to you and noticing my breathing and all of those kind of things. And so for me, it's like there's an internal peace, and then there's an internal knowing that that I'm a part of all of that. And that's that cognitive understanding of the process. But I think what you're referring to is that when you're actually experiencing that, when all of the brainwave patterns actually are in relationship in a way that allows you to deeply go to a space that you don't go to without that brainwave pattern, basically.
Yeah, and it's the absence of that cognitive thought, because any thought that enters that space is a gateway into a story, which is back into the mind. So it's like you're holding your attention, and there is no cognitive thought in that space. And for me, it's kind of like a vortex into, I don't know what, but it's freaking powerful. And I'm thinking to share some meditations. Like, I'd love to take people into my meditation, so I'll do this moving forward, is just record some of my meditations and invite people to join me in meditations, just to, I don't know, share my experience.
Because what we're talking about, and we're looking at meditation and mindfulness, and we're going, here's the soul's experience of what it's like to be in a meditation. This is what it's like when there is nothing else. And then we have like the science of what your brain's doing. Like, how do we bring this technology so that people can actually access this space in a way that doesn't take 15 years to cultivate. And then there's these strategies that I'm talking about, which is like how do we teach people who aren't there yet, who are just dipping their toe in the water, and give them some experiences of what it's like in their conscious mind to have the benefit of being able to have more space.
I love that. That's really cool. And that's essentially what we're doing there in the space that you're in right now, is setting up a lab so that you've got all the EEG machines there, so that you can show people their brainwave states and how to move their brainwave states, and you've got entrainment tools there to bring people down into those states. So
yes, and with the alpha theta training, the beautiful thing about that is that you're actually being guided by sound. Your brain is actually being gently encouraged to go in a direction that takes you to a place that gives you this experience. I was just watching something this morning with the 40 Years of Zen, the bulletproof, Dave Asprey, the bulletproof guy. He has, so 7 days of meditating using EEG, etc., to, get your meditation practice happening. It sets you back about 15 grand or something like that for a week, and you just immerse yourself in this. And I thought, wow, look at what a funky space. So there's lots of really big players in this space doing some very cool stuff, investigating how we bring this conscious business piece to the world, and change lives, change the world. And so it's very, very interesting. Very interesting.
100%. Like, it's as we prepare to, like, you've got the big players out there going out into space, like Jeff from Amazon, you've got Richard Branson, you've got Elon Musk. They're all like looking at space and spending billions of dollars to target that. Like, for me, it's like you and I are looking at the other way, like going in. And then for me, it's in meditation, it's about focusing on something. Like, for me, I use this point here, I focus here, and I focus there intently, and it's in that, like, the hyper focus of that point, that it opens up to a whole new space. And that's freaking powerful as well. And that's
very powerful.
And that's what we're talking about here, is like the technology to be able to explore what that is, because that is like for me, that's the human evolution. Like I think this is,
Mm.
we're moving from that thinking and doing mentality to being and knowing. In that you're connecting to that sense of who you are on a deep level, and in doing so, you just know because you're aligned to it. And then when you use your attention to then set your intentions that are aligned to that flow of intuition, instinct, well then, boom, like the magic.
Well, it fuels everything you're doing.
Yeah.
It changes the fuel. It gives you exponential growth. It gives you movement. It's exciting because some of the things that have gotten in the way just disappear. You make a different decision. You see something for something that is different, and that might be in your business. It might be personally. It might be something you've been struggling with, letting go of. It can be forgiving someone. It doesn't necessarily have to be. Oh wow, like I, just revolutionize my business. But you will listen to lots and lots of really big players who will tell you that their meditation practice was the thing that actually got them where they needed to go.
Yeah, I get it. It's something that I've been trying to explain to my son for some years now.
You're too close to be able to explain. He needs a girlfriend who will tell him all about that. That'll make it more believable.
Yeah. I think though, like I have, at worst, I have the same wish for him that I have for a lot of other people, and that is that their pain gets enough that it leads them to this point of finding this as an answer. Like when the pain is enough and the discomfort is enough, you'll do the practice. And I guess what we're talking about here is having the technology to, take the pill and have it work more effectively. But for me, it was the pain that made me do the practice to develop this skill.
And my hope for our planet is that all these beautiful children that we're bringing up right now who just have the opportunity with parents who are a lot more mindful than definitely I was when I was a 20-year-old still trying to figure out my own life and raise a human, but now we've got this opportunity where people are really looking at their lives and what's important and scaling down the plasma TVs to actually have more time and presence with the people that they love. I remember a little metaphor that I saw demonstrated, which was, it's quite common. You've probably heard it before, but it's like the big cruise ship comes into the island, and there's a guy, doing some beadwork, and he's got a bit of fishing happening, and he's got the kids playing on the beach, and a successful businessman gets off the boat and says, what are you doing and how do you do it and all that kind of stuff. And he said, look, I'm in this business and I can multiply the streams of capacity for you. We can get more boats, we can do this, and he lays out this beautiful big business plan. And the guy says, so what will that give me? What will that give me when I do all of that? And he said, well, you'll be able to sit on the beach and play with your grandchildren. And it's like, we have to know ourselves. Like, this is the emotional intelligent part. If you know what makes you happy, that's what you're here to do, is to be happy and contribute and have a good life. It's not about the trials and tribulations. I think that's a good story we've given ourselves to make it all work. But
That's it. Rich or wealth is an individual thing. It's like, what is wealth and what is rich?
What does your success look like?
Yeah. And don't swallow somebody else's dogma. And what I love about this space is when you take control of your attention and you tap into here, well, then it's not about swallowing somebody else's dogma, because you know who you are, and it's like, it's then you, like you choose for you because you know what's right. You're not buying
And
somebody else's.
there's no energy in defending it,
No,
because you don't have to defend it because you know
because
it.
that's exactly it. It's like, oh, it's okay. I'm in it. I know who I am. I don't need to defend that to you. Like, if
Mm,
you don't agree, that's totally fine. Like,
yep.
because I'm in it. Like, I'm feeling it. So, good luck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think I've really enjoyed this chat. I really love our chats. I think
Oh, yeah. We have a good time, don't we? Yeah.
this is pretty typical of where we can go, and I look forward to probably going off on many abstract tangents moving forward as we continue to
Mm,
explore. And obviously, we're going to bring tech in, and you're somewhat set up. Maybe just tell us a little bit about, before we sign off, what sort of setup you
mhm,
do have there. I know it's early days, so you're at theSPACE in Cairns.
mhm.
Tell us about what you got set up there.
Okay. At the moment, as you said, it's really early days, and some of my gear is still coming up from down south. Um, But what we're going to have in here is we're going to have the opportunity for people to be able to actually have a look at their brain in real time. So you're going to be able to. Now, I'll preface this with, everybody kind of gets a bit scared at this. Like, what am I going to see? Am I going to see like a wrecked brain? And it's like standing like naked in front of someone. It's like, everybody comes with this kind of idea that I'm going to see something, some dark secret they have.
Yeah.
um, but of course, that's not true at all. Every
Yeah.
brain is individual, and my job is to get your brain firing on all 6 cylinders or 8 cylinders or 12 cylinders, whatever it is for you. Um, and each brain operates at a different level. So it's not about making one size fit all. It's about looking at what makes you happiest. And the brain is fantastic at this. If you like it, it's good for you. And if you don't like it, it's not good for you. That's just
Mm.
basically the premise of EEG, when
Mm.
you're doing training. So the opportunity will be to watch a game.
So I just ask, so the distinction there
Mm,
is like two things. There's EEG, which can measure brain frequency, but you've
mhm.
also got EEG, which can be used for entrainment. So it can actually influence the EEG. So it can influence your brainwave states as opposed to just measure.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what I have is some very rudimentary gaming for your brain, and we set you up so that we measure your EEG, and then we start getting your brain to play a game. And this is something that really freaks people out in the beginning, because you don't contribute at all. The only thing you need to do is have your eyes open watching the screen, because your brain actually figures out what's going on in the brainwave part, and it actually starts to respond to this visual cue. Um, of the game. So you get to fly a rocket ship, or wander through the forest, or things like that, but you make the people move, you make the rocket move, etc. And while you're doing that, you're actually training your brain to be more where it needs to be.
Yeah. Well,
And you can do that automatically, or I might be doing a one-on-one session with you so that I'm actually looking to achieve a particular thing. Um, and then we've got some eyes closed stuff. So you can actually sit back and really look at taking yourself to a particular state to do a particular kind of work. So it can be, I'm trying to overcome something that's been a problem in my life for a really long time. We're also looking at like measuring EEG while you're listening to entrainment. So we've got all of these fantastic entrainment audios, like a whole library of, and you can go online and buy all this stuff, but you don't know, is that right for my brain? Does that actually give me what I need? Whereas we're going to have a look at it in here and go, okay, when I play this particular entrainment, we're going to have a look at what your brain does. Does it kind of get excited? Does it calm down? Does it, is it more congruent, or, is there more cohesiveness around the relationships, etc.? So there's some really exciting bits and pieces. We've got, like, I'm trialing a new piece of tech here right now around sleep. Just really interesting stuff to play. But, you know, the idea being that once we get set up, it's kind of, you know, like going to be, I want it to be inclusive and comfortable. And so people can come in and like do 15 minutes of training and pop out again, you know, and know they've actually reset where they're at.
Cool. And for me, I guess the greater vision with this and working with you on this, and I'll shout out to Rob too at the Brain Room. He's doing some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
In Cairns as well. So we're going to play with Rob moving forward as well. Is really, it's that human evolution piece. Is really, it's like taking people from where they are to, like, you know, where can we go? Like, and I think the time is now. It's become really, really pertinent that we do this work. Consciously evolve. So yeah, cool. All right, well, thank you, Christine. No doubt
Thank
we'll
you.
jump back on soon and have another chat. Stay tuned. There'll be a bunch more cool people, different technologies as we continue to explore